It was beginning to darken as the clouds slowly cascaded over the moonlit sky. With a loud yawn, I forced sleep away from my eyes, unable to rest until I reached my destination. My name is David Tenetern. I'm a detective currently living in Philadelphia. I have been, as of recent, not having the greatest of days at the office. Crime has been at an uprise, and the stress of the victims' families were more than enough to put an ache in my head. 2 long months, the stress seemed to be never-ending, until, like the fortunes of heaven smiling upon me, a new case was put in my hands. The chief said it was a missing persons case, and that I need more experience in this field if I wish to transfer. Even though there have been more than enough people disappearing in the city, this case was far away, farther than the city would ever grow to be. I was to drive to Lancaster, about 100 miles from Philly, to the house where the person was last seen. So far, I was about 3/4 of the way there. The announcer on the radio marked the time of night, 2 a.m. It was getting harder to keep my attention on the road, as the dreams lying in wait in my mind were slowly reaching to the edges of my eyes. I needed caffeine. So far, I was in a small, ritzy town. There wasn't any inns or motels that I could find as my car lazily passed the Silo Drive road sign. A lit-up sign caught my attention, the Black Horse Tavern. Surely they should have something to perk up my mind. I found a place to park and threw open the car door. After only a minute or two, I found myself at the entrance of the tavern. Even though the witching hour was near, there were at least a dozen youths inside the little restaurant. I could clearly see there was more than a variety of spirits adown, but only a few patrons held a small cup in hand, steam clearly rising into the cold air. Coffee. Sweet, warm caffeine. I stepped inside, immediately waited on and seated near the bar. The bartender was busy resetting the glasses behind the table. She was a young girl, mid-20s I'm guessing, pale skin, and wore a simple black t-shirt. The part that caught my eye about the girl was her silken white hair, neatly wrapped in a bun. She was cutting limes when she began to ask, "So you gonna order sometime, or do you just like my company?" She smiled while looking at me. I laughed a bit, simply asking for what I need. "No, I just need a cup of joe. Sugar and milk?" I shook my head. "Leave it black, sweetie." She laughed at my remark as I put down her cutting knife and began to make the coffee. In just a few minutes, my caffeinated angel appeared before me. "Need anything else, dear?" the bartender coyly asked. "Nah, I'm good. Thank you, though." I winked at her. She laughed again. After a while, the two of us started talking about work. I told her about my occupation, and she told me about hers. She apparently was only 17, but was able to get this job by renting the room upstairs. She said the owner will let her stay there for free if she works every night with no pay. It sounded like a tough time, but at least it's a free roof on her head. Eventually, we got on the topic on why I'm here. She fixed herself some hot cocoa and sat across the table from me. "You think the guy died?" she asked curiously. I shook my head. "I think he either got lost or was kidnapped." She nodded her head, taking a sip of the drink in front of her. "So there might be a threat." "Most likely," I responded. Just then a thought struck my head. "Hey, sweetie, I never caught your name," I sheepishly laughed. She sighed and shook her head. "I don't remember introducing myself. My name is Violet. David Tenetern, investigative detective." I happily shook her hand. Hours passed as we talked about many different ideas and theories about my case. Eventually, the bar started to close. It was almost 4 in the morning. Sadly, the coffee wore off already, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to make the remainder of the drive tonight. I decided to sleep in the car, and it would be the best idea for now. Just a couple hours will allow my mind to rest, needed before finishing the last stretch of my travels. However, before I was able to go out to the door, the young girl called out to me. "You heading home?" A bit of curiosity would be heard in her voice. I stretched my limbs and arched my back as the vertebrae cracked pleasantly. "Nah, I have a long way to go home. I'll just stay in the car for the night until I feel up to driving again." I turned to her, seeing a bit of disappointment in her eyes. She took a step closer. Her demeanor became more polite than before. "That doesn't sound too comfortable. Would you like to stay at my place for the night?" A smile played on her lips. "Are you sure, Violet?" She pleasantly nodded, her tight bun bobbing up and down a tad from her hair loosening in the place. "Of course. I have a couch on the bed. You can take the bed for the night, and I'll just grab a pillow and the sleeping bag." I gratefully accepted the gesture, following the young girl up the stairs and to the floor above the tavern. We went down the short hallway until we got to the door at the far left of it. She unlocked her door and let me inside her bedroom. The room was very large for a basic apartment. The bathroom was on the right-hand side closest to the door. The couch could be seen immediately from entering across from the basic television. Bed seems to be only 10 or 15 feet from the back of the couch. If you take a few steps around the room, you'll find a simple kitchen accompanying with a stove, fridge, table, and countertop, close to the bedroom. For a young girl, this was a fantastic deal for her to take. Took off my jacket and shoes and quickly got under the covers. Violet went to a wardrobe close to the television, pulling out a thin blanket and sleeping bag. She walked over and picked up a pillow on the other side of the bed before turning off the lights and laying down on the sofa. "Good night, David," she exclaimed softly to me. Half awake, I lightly responded, "Good night, Violet."